Here you are again, stumbling over the same stone. Don't tell me it's just a coincidence. Come on, have you ever asked yourself why you keep making the same mistake over and over? Is it because you don't learn? Or maybe because you don't want to learn? Let me tell you a truth that might hurt. The problem isn't the world, the circumstances, or even the alignment of the planets. The problem is you, inside your head, in that obsession with repeating patterns like a scratched record. Stoic philosophy makes this very clear. If you can't look inward and own your part of the responsibility, you will stay trapped in the same vicious cycle. So stop justifying yourself, stop blaming fate, and start facing the real enemy, your own decisions. Honestly, how many more times do you need to stumble to realize that the problem isn't the stone, but the way you walk? Take note of the following historical lessons. They could save you a lot of headaches. Don't miss the last one, it will leave you speechless. But before we dive into them, listen to this story that will help you better understand the wisdom behind this material. In a small fishing village, there lived Joachim, a young carpenter known for his ability to craft beautiful and sturdy furniture. However, Joachim had one flaw. He was stubborn and refused to accept advice, even when he made mistakes. One day, a wealthy merchant arrived in the village looking for the best carpenter to build a boat strong enough to withstand the open seas, winds, and waves. Confident in his skills, Joachim accepted the challenge. He worked tirelessly for weeks, ignoring suggestions from experienced fishermen who advised him to reinforce certain parts of the hull. "I know what I'm doing," he insisted, refusing to listen. Eventually, Joachim delivered the boat, convinced he had built a masterpiece. The merchant set sail at dawn, but halfway through the journey a storm hit, and the hull that Joachim had worked so hard on split in half. Luckily, the crew was rescued, but the boat was destroyed. When the furious merchant returned, he demanded that Joachim take responsibility for the loss. Embarrassed, Joachim decided to find out what had gone wrong. Instead of defending himself, he listened to the fishermen's criticisms. They explained how he had failed to consider the pressure that water exerts on certain parts of the hull, and how untreated wood cannot withstand salt and humidity. Determined to improve, Joachim started over, this time applying what he had learned. He incorporated the fishermen's techniques, reinforcing every joint carefully. Months later, the new boat was ready, a strong and reliable vessel. When the merchant came back to test it, he sailed through the same stretch of ocean, and this time he made it safely to his destination. Back at the port, Joachim greeted him with a shy smile. "I'm not perfect, but I've learned that listening can save more than just a boat," he said. The merchant, impressed by Joachim's humility and improved craftsmanship, not only paid him for the work but also recommended him widely. From that moment on, Joachim became a wiser carpenter. His furniture and boats were not only masterpieces, but each piece told a story of mistakes turned into lessons. He had learned that pride doesn't build bridges or boats. Patience and learning do. The moral of the story is that recognizing our mistakes and learning from them not only sharpens our skills, but also strengthens our character. In the end, true failure isn't about making mistakes. It's about failing to learn from them. Before we move on to the first lesson, if you find these videos helpful, subscribe and activate notifications to stay up to date with the latest content. Let's get started. Tripping over the same stone. This has surely happened to you. You face a problem. You do everything you think you're supposed to, and yet you end up exactly where you started. The cycle repeats itself over and over. But instead of finding a real solution, you keep facing the same obstacle, as if trapped inside an invisible maze from which you can't escape. Why do we keep making the same mistakes? It's tempting to think the problem is out there, that if only the circumstances were different, if other people acted differently, if there weren't so many distractions, then everything would be easier. But the painful truth is that the biggest obstacle isn't outside of us, it's inside. Imagine you're walking through a forest. It's dark. Branches hit your face, you stumble, you fall, you get up, and you keep going. You pass the same spot and trip again. Why do you keep tripping over the same route you already know is there? Because you don't see it. Because you're too focused on the pain from the fall or the frustration of not moving forward. Your mind is distracted, repeating the same pattern of behavior without reflecting on what's causing it. The Stoics talked about this. The repetition of mistakes isn't just bad luck. It's a lack of awareness. If we're not conscious of what we're doing, if we don't reflect on our decisions, we are doomed to stumble over and over on the same stones. Instead of seeking solutions outside ourselves, we should look within and ask, why am I making this decision? What pattern am I unconsciously repeating? To break this cycle, we first need to identify the traps we don't see. These traps aren't always visible. Sometimes they hide behind our own biases, fears, or unexamined expectations. But if we learn to observe our actions critically, we start to spot the roots and stones before we trip over them. The key is constant reflection, always asking ourselves, why did I do that? Is this truly the best choice? A simple technique to avoid falling into these repeated mistakes is to practice the pause. When making important decisions, stop, breathe. Do a quick mental check. Are you repeating the same old pattern, or are you genuinely making a different choice? If you do this often, you'll start detecting these invisible traps before they trip you up. To sum it up, the answer to the question, why do I keep making the same mistakes, isn't out there in the world. It's inside you, in the way you think, decide, and act. Break free from unconscious repetition. Start seeing the stones in your path. Only then will you truly move forward. As a wise Stoic proverb says, my friend, the greatest obstacle to finding solutions is the blindness caused by repeating the same mistakes. 2. Bad decisions. Have you ever stopped to think about why you keep repeating the same mistakes over and over? No, it's not because you're unlucky or because the universe is conspiring against you. The truth is much simpler. Your brain is stubborn, and worse, it loves being that way. If you've ever felt stuck in a cycle of decisions you know aren't helping you, you're not alone. This repetitive behavior has much more to do with how your mind works than with any kind of cosmic conspiracy. First, let's put things into context. The human brain is, by nature, a strong advocate for comfort. It loves what's familiar, even if the familiar choice isn't the healthiest or smartest one. This tendency is called psychological homeostasis. It basically means that your brain prefers to keep doing what it already knows, even if that choice leads you nowhere. It's like having a cooking disaster and yet continuing to make the same recipe, hoping it will someday turn out right, even though deep down you know it won't. Now the real question is, why do we keep making mistakes even when we know they're not the smartest path? Here's where the concept of cognitive justification comes in. To avoid the stress of doubt and stay comfortable, your brain finds reasons that convince you that what you're doing makes sense, even when it clearly doesn't. For example, you keep procrastinating at work, and your brain tells you, I work better under pressure. Or, more subtly, you convince yourself that your last toxic relationship was a valuable learning experience, when in reality you just got caught up in more emotional drama. But what happens when the brain decides that comfort is more important than truth? You repeat the pattern again and again, even if it hurts you. This process has a biological basis. The brain has an incredible ability to store habits, both good and bad. This reward system is linked to the release of dopamine, the pleasure neurotransmitter. Every time you repeat a behavior, even a bad decision, your brain feels like it achieves some kind of reward, even if it's not the reward you truly need. However, not all is lost. If you've ever wondered how to break these cycles, Stoic philosophy can be a powerful ally. The Stoics, those ancient thinkers who mastered how to deal with the human mind, insisted on the importance of self-awareness and discipline. According to them, the greatest enemy of our well-being isn't what happens to us, but how we choose to react. If you can step back every time your brain tries to justify a bad decision, you'll start to take control of your life. It's like a dog following you at the park. Instead of chasing it aimlessly, you guide it where you want to go. To start breaking this pattern, try pausing before making an important decision. If you ask yourself, am I repeating this mistake just because it's what my mind prefers? You'll already be taking a major step. Recognizing patterns is the first move toward freeing yourself from them. In conclusion, next time you fall into the same mistake, instead of harshly criticizing yourself, think of your brain as a stubborn child that needs guidance. If you offer it a smarter alternative, it might finally stop causing trouble. Sometimes the first step toward change is simply not giving in to the pressure of doing what you've always done. As Epictetus reminds us, only when you stop making excuses are you truly free to make wise decisions. 3. Stop blaming the universe. Has it ever happened that after stumbling you looked up at the sky and thought, "Why does this always happen to me?" As if the universe were plotting against you? Well, the time has come to stop blaming the stars and start looking a little closer to home. Like it or not, the fault is yours. And yes, I know that sounds harsh, but have you ever wondered why you keep repeating the same mistakes again and again? It's a cycle as comfortable as it is unnecessary. And the worst part is, you don't even realize you're the one feeding it. Imagine if every time you tripped over the same stone, someone said, "Again? Really?" Well, that's exactly what you do to yourself over and over. Somehow you've gotten used to the stumble. Instead of taking responsibility for your actions, you settle into a comfort zone where blaming fate is much easier than pausing, reflecting, and learning. Throughout history, Stoic philosophers have spoken extensively about the importance of controlling our reactions to situations. They said that while we can't control what happens to us, we can control how we respond. Now the question is, how do you respond each time you make a mistake? Do you continue down the same path that led to your fall, or do you at least pause for a moment to evaluate whether it really makes sense to keep repeating the same behavior? Because let's be honest, if you trip once, it's an accident. If you trip twice, it's carelessness. But if you trip 3 times, well, it's starting to look like a lifestyle. Now that we've diagnosed the problem, how can you get out of this endless cycle? First of all, you don't need a magic wand or a 10-step enlightenment plan. The key is to accept that, yes, you are responsible for your decisions. It's easy to blame fate, friends, bad luck, or even retrograde planets. But the truth is that with each choice you make, you shape your own reality. If you keep wondering why you always end up making the same choices, it's because deep down you're afraid to face the truth. If something isn't working, change starts with you. What you can do, if you truly want to break the cycle, is to start making a small pause before making decisions. That pause might be enough to shift the course of your life. Think, reflect. And if you ever come across that stone on your path again, instead of stumbling, simply move your foot aside. It sounds easy, but it takes practice, and it won't always feel pleasant. Sometimes it means letting go of things that comfort you, habits, routines, or even excuses. Stoic philosophy is very clear about this. It's not the circumstances that define us, but how we respond to them. So next time you think the universe is against you, remember maybe, just maybe, the real obstacle is your own inability to accept that you're the one placing those stumbling blocks in your own path. And that's okay. Everyone trips. But it's about time to stop blaming the stars. Real change begins with you. And the first step is to stop making excuses. Let's make this crystal clear, my friend. The first step toward breaking the cycle of mistakes is accepting that you are the one repeating them. Only then can you begin to write a different story. The enemy called the comfort zone. Ah, the comfort zone. That cozy place where everything seems under control, predictable, and safe. The refuge that welcomes you when everything else feels chaotic. Sound familiar? We all love the feeling of comfort. But have you ever stopped to think that the very comfort you crave could actually be your worst enemy? Yes. That place where you've settled in so comfortably might be sabotaging your growth and progress without you even noticing. Let's look at an example. Imagine you're driving a car in neutral. You feel relaxed, comfortable, everything seems fine. But there's a problem. You're not moving forward. The engine may be humming beautifully, but you're stuck in place. It's like a kind of paralysis. Even worse, at some point you might convince yourself that there's no need to move at all. After all, why change something that seems to be working? That's exactly what the comfort zone does. When you stay in that cozy state for too long, you stop learning, you stop changing. And even worse, you start repeating the same mistakes over and over again. You recognize it, don't you? That tendency to trip over the same stones, to choose the same failing solutions, as if looking for a shortcut, only to end up in a dead-end street. Comfort may seem harmless, but in truth, it becomes an invisible prison that holds you back. So what can you do about it? First, you must wake up. Get out of the self-deception you've built around yourself. The Stoics understood this perfectly. Real change doesn't happen when things are easy. In fact, it's the opposite. True growth happens when things get tough, when you face challenges and force yourself out of that safe, familiar place. It's not about waiting for circumstances to change. It's about being the change yourself. Change is uncomfortable, and that discomfort is exactly what pushes you to learn and to improve. One simple way to start stepping out of your comfort zone is by practicing self-observation. Constantly ask yourself, why do I keep making the same mistakes? The answer isn't complicated. Comfort blinds you. It makes you think what you already know is enough, when in fact it's holding you back. So every time you feel the temptation to stay where you are, do something different. You don't have to make radical decisions overnight, but it's important to start taking small steps toward the unknown. The goal is clear. Don't let comfort keep you stuck in neutral. Instead, seek out new challenges, new opportunities, and yes, new lessons. True learning only happens when you dare to break through the boundaries of what's familiar and leap into uncertainty. The habits that lead you to failure. Have you ever stopped to think about how many times you found yourself making the same mistakes again and again? Maybe you wake up late, procrastinate endlessly, or promise yourself you'll start exercising tomorrow, and guess what? Tomorrow never comes. You get trapped in a cycle of impulsive decisions as if you were on autopilot. But why do we keep making the same mistakes? The answer lies in the habits that, without realizing it, control our lives. Imagine you're driving a car and suddenly switch on the autopilot. Everything seems fine for a while, but you soon realize the car is following a route you didn't plan. That's exactly how unconscious habits work. We let ourselves be carried away by what we've done countless times before, without questioning, without thinking if that's really the direction we want. Habits, these small daily actions we perform without thinking, are what keep us trapped in cycles of repetitive mistakes. You become so used to acting a certain way that you don't even notice anymore. Just like the car on autopilot, your mind simply follows the easiest route. Comfort, though it feels good temporarily, becomes your enemy. I assure you that the decisions you make on autopilot are rarely the best or wisest ones. Stoic philosophy teaches us to become aware of our thoughts and actions, to truly take control of our lives. Otherwise, we will keep making the same mistakes without learning anything from them. So how do you change this? First, you need to realize that you are on autopilot. It sounds simple, but it's not. Most of the time, we're not even aware of what we're really doing. That's where the power of reflection and conscious decision-making comes in. It's like noticing your car is headed in the wrong direction and deciding to grab the wheel to steer it where you actually want to go. One technique is to start being more mindful of your daily decisions. Pay close attention to the small habits you have and ask yourself, is this leading me where I want to go? Practice this every day in every situation. For example, if you tend to leave everything for tomorrow, try breaking that cycle by doing one important thing today. Start with something simple. Wake up 10 minutes earlier or finish a small task you've been postponing. Little by little, you'll regain control of your actions and decisions. Replace automatic habits with healthier, more conscious ones. The Stoics understood this perfectly. We are responsible for our reactions. If we don't question our customs, we'll lose ourselves in a sea of automatic decisions. For instance, if you often overeat or procrastinate on responsibilities, the first step is recognizing those actions and redirecting your focus toward what you really want to achieve. It can be something as simple as setting your phone to Do Not Disturb mode while you work, or writing down your goals each morning. Remember, it's a process, not an instant change. But with practice, control will return to your hands. Life doesn't have to be a series of repeated mistakes. You can change your course, but first, you need to pause and realize you're running on autopilot. Only when you become conscious of your habits and start making decisions that align with your true goals will you be able to break the cycle of repetition. As the Stoics say, true freedom comes when we are no longer slaves to our automatic impulses. So next time you're about to make the same mistake, stop. Think, change your direction. Start writing your own story, not the story of your old habits. As Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, if you don't change your habits will change your life without you even noticing. 6. Learn from your mistakes. Have you ever noticed how sometimes it feels like we have a special talent for repeating the same mistakes over and over? It's as if we're stuck in an endless cycle of bad decisions. But if you stop to think about it, mistakes are actually some of the best opportunities for growth, as long as we take the time to learn from them. Instead of endlessly tripping over the same stones, why not start seeing them as teachers? Often we repeat the same mistakes simply because we don't spend enough time reflecting on them. It may sound like something a Stoic philosopher would say, but it's true. Mistakes keep happening because we don't give ourselves the chance to analyze and learn from them. How many times have you made a mistake, told yourself never again, and then found yourself making the same mistake shortly afterward? The reason is simple. We don't pay attention to the process that led us there. If we did, we'd realize that every mistake has something to teach us, if we are willing to listen. Turning mistakes into wisdom requires a shift in perspective. The Stoics, those great thinkers of the past, believed that one of humanity's greatest achievements is mastering our thoughts and emotions. Applying this to our mistakes, we must stop seeing them as mere failures and start seeing them as lessons. Next time you stumble over the same stone, instead of getting frustrated, pause and reflect. Ask yourself, what did I do wrong? Why did I do it? What can I do differently next time to avoid this mistake? Reflection is key. If instead of blindly moving forward, you take a moment to think about what happened, you'll see that every mistake is actually an opportunity for improvement. This doesn't mean you should drown in self-pity or regret every small slip. On the contrary, Stoic philosophy teaches us that while we can't control everything that happens to us, we can control how we react to it. If the mistake was caused by something outside your control, simply accept it and move on. If it was something you did, own it, learn from it, and keep going without getting trapped in endless what-ifs. Another powerful way to learn from mistakes is to talk about them with someone you trust. Often we're so caught up in our own thoughts that we can't see the situation clearly. Talking it over with another person can reveal perspectives you hadn't considered. When that happens, the mistake stops being just a stumble and becomes a stepping stone toward growth. Don't be fooled into thinking mistakes are purely negative. Instead of seeing them as causes for frustration, transform them into opportunities to learn. If you can turn each mistake into a lesson, you'll be much closer to avoiding them in the future. And most importantly, you'll be advancing toward the person you want to become. So the next time you make a mistake, instead of blaming yourself, ask, what can I learn from this? Let me be clear, my friend, mistakes are not falls. They are steps on the ladder to success. Self-justification, a perfect refuge. It wasn't the right time. I wasn't in the right mood, or my favorite. The circumstances just weren't ideal. Meanwhile, we keep repeating the same behaviors that lead us to the same disappointing results. It's like watching the same movie over and over and expecting a different ending. It won't change, and deep down you know it. So how do you break out of this pointless cycle? First, by admitting that it's not the timing or the situation that needs to change. It's your mindset and actions. Ask yourself, why do I keep making the same mistakes? What inside me makes me believe that this time it will finally work? The key lies in awareness. Take a moment not just to reflect on your decisions, but on the motivations behind them. That's the real key to breaking the cycle. If you want something to change, start by changing yourself. Pause. Analyze the behavior patterns that always lead you to the same dead end. Ask yourself, what can I do differently? Not just in the situation, but in how I approach challenges. Don't fool yourself into thinking the problem lies outside. As the Stoics would say, our true strength lies in controlling our emotions and reactions. And finally, stop relying on the excuse that this time will be different. It won't, unless you truly change. The difference doesn't lie in new plans, but in new actions. As my grandmother used to say, if you don't change your way of thinking, you'll keep stumbling over the same stones, even if you paint them different colors. 7. The art of letting go. Have you ever felt that the more you cling to something, or someone, the more complicated your life becomes? As if no matter how hard you try, everything just slips through your fingers and stress hits you like an unstoppable wave? What if I told you that the real secret lies in letting go, in stepping back? Yes, I know it sounds like something out of a cheap self-help book, but hear me out. Letting go is actually one of the most powerful acts you can perform. Taking a step back, a moment of silence. And trust me, life will call you to move forward again when the time is right. Letting go isn't the end of emotions or the abandonment of what you love. It's understanding that what you have does not own you. When you live constantly chasing everything you think you need, you lose the peace you could have if you just learned to loosen your grip a little. The truth is, clinging to things is easy. What's hard is letting go, and that's where real power lies. Detachment isn't renunciation, it's liberation. It's as if by letting go, you gain greater clarity and more control. It's funny how the universe seems to place us in situations that force us to take that step back, to wait, to sit in silence. Imagine yourself in an endless argument. You know the type. The kind of exchange where the goal isn't to understand, but to prove who's right, as if that really matters. The natural impulse is to keep going, to talk louder, to add more reasons. But what if instead you simply took a step back and stayed silent? Not out of weakness, but out of understanding. You'd be surprised to see how the other person suddenly starts searching for words in the empty space you left. Someone will try to fill that silence, pushing you to speak. And that's where the real power lies, in silence, in detachment from the need to be heard or to prove a point. Stoic philosophy often talks about this kind of detachment, but not in a romanticized, spiritualized way. The Stoics weren't monks meditating in the mountains. For them, letting go meant accepting what you can't control and focusing on what you can. Detachment doesn't mean giving up on what you love. It means freeing yourself from the weight of expectations and the anxiety that things or people can bring. When you let go of those expectations, you discover an inner peace you may have never imagined. Of course, this doesn't happen overnight. If it were easy, we wouldn't all be looking for quick fixes online or buying books that promise to free us from everything that weighs us down. Detachment demands practice, self-understanding, and above all, patience with yourself. But once you get there, once you understand the power of stepping back, you'll realize that instead of losing something, you actually gain something. A peace that no one and nothing can take from you. So next time you feel the impulse to cling to something or someone, stop. Step back. Stay silent. Let things flow without trying to control them. You'll be surprised at what happens when you stop needing everything. Burn this into your mind, my friend. True peace is not found in what you possess, but in what you're able to let go. 8. The weight of emotions. Have you ever wondered why you keep making the same mistakes over and over? I'm not talking about small slips like forgetting to turn off the lights or sneaking a piece of cake. I mean the big mistakes, the ones we know deep down we should have already learned to avoid. Why do we stay stuck in this cycle? Maybe, as the Stoics teach us, the root of the problem lies in how we deal with our emotions, especially fear and guilt. Fear, that close companion, is a master at putting brakes on any kind of change. You think you won't make the same mistake again, but deep inside, something freezes you. You're afraid of failing again. And it's precisely that fear that leads you to impulsive decisions, or worse, to avoiding important decisions altogether. It's like a mistreated dog that trembles every time a similar situation arises, even when there's no real danger. That fear makes you doubt, keeps you from moving forward, and traps you in the same starting point, spinning endlessly in circles. Fear isn't something you solve with empty promises like, "This time I'll get it right." You have to face it consciously. One of the key lessons from Stoic philosophy is that we cannot control everything that happens around us, but we can control how we react. If fear becomes the engine behind your decisions, I can guarantee you'll continue making the same mistakes, because your choices won't be based on what you truly need, but on what you're afraid of. And if fear paralyzes you, guilt will drown you. How many times have you made a mistake and instead of learning from it, punished yourself so harshly that you couldn't even get back up? Guilt has that strange ability to trap you, to convince you that you don't deserve another chance. I've messed up too many times. Why even try again, you think? And so the cycle continues. Mistake, guilt, Fear. Repeat. Guilt, when unmanaged, becomes an emotional anchor, like trying to run with weights strapped to your feet. But what if I told you that guilt isn't helping you learn anything? It only feeds the mistake. Sometimes the most valuable thing you can do is stop blaming yourself and start asking, what can I learn from this? How can I do it differently next time? That's the secret. Letting go of these destructive emotions and taking back control over your decisions. Fear and guilt are inevitable, but the power they have over you is not. Practice what the Stoics called stoic indifference. Recognize these emotions, but don't let them control you. Reflect on what's within your control and what isn't. You can't prevent every mistake, but you can prevent yourself from staying trapped in them. The next time fear or guilt tries to take over, pause. Breathe deeply. Remind yourself that these feelings are only temporary obstacles. Recognize what you're feeling, but don't let it rule your life. If you fall, get up. If you fail, learn. That is the real key to breaking the cycle. Nothing is more exhausting than being caught in an endless loop of mistakes and regrets. But fear and guilt don't have to captain your ship. With a little reflection and practice, you can begin to regain control of your emotions and make choices based on what you truly want, not what you fear. And maybe, just maybe, you'll finally stop repeating the same mistakes and start building something better. As the wise saying goes, it's not what you did that keeps you trapped. It's your refusal to learn from it. 9. Think before you act. Have you ever made a decision and immediately realized it was a monumental mistake, but it was already too late? It's easy to fall into the cycle of, I did it again. In that moment, you might think, why do I keep making the same mistakes? It's happened 1,000 times. The answer doesn't lie in repeating the same moves, hoping for different results. We're not talking about magic tricks. It's something much simpler, the power to pause before acting. The issue isn't that you're foolish or that you don't know what you're doing. The problem is that often we don't give ourselves enough time to stop and reflect before we act. It's like speeding toward a dangerous curve and instead of slowing down, pressing harder on the gas. Impulsiveness, that need to act immediately, drives us to make decisions without thinking, to react without weighing the consequences. And of course, the result is usually the same, a mistake that seems to repeat itself over and over in our lives. This is where Stoic philosophy shines. The Stoics weren't boring people who spent their lives meditating on mountaintops. They understood that the key to making wise decisions lies in pausing before reacting. Before jumping headfirst into a decision, stop for a moment. Pause. Why not? The simple act of stopping for a few seconds can prevent a cascade of poor choices. One technique proposed by the Stoics is the reflective pause. Imagine you're a chess player. Before moving a piece, you stop and think about the consequences of that move. What happens if I do this? What happens if I don't? You can apply the same logic in daily life. Take an extra second. That small pause can make a big difference. It doesn't have to be a deep meditation or a yoga session before every decision, just a moment to breathe and reflect. Another powerful technique is to visualize consequences before taking impulsive action. Take a moment to imagine what could go wrong. About to make an unnecessary purchase? Think about the money you could save or invest instead. About to say something hurtful? Imagine how the other person would feel and how you would feel afterward. This simple exercise of imagining the impact of your actions can completely transform the way you make decisions. Practicing gratitude also helps. Often we make poor choices because we're chasing after something we feel we lack, something that would make us feel better in the moment. But when we are more grateful for what we already have, we're less likely to make impulsive, dissatisfaction-driven decisions. Appreciate what you have before running after something new. In short, you don't need to be a Stoic philosophy expert to start applying these principles. The most important thing is to start pausing before you act. That simple gesture can help you realize that most of the time, immediate action isn't necessary. Pause is a powerful tool. Applied well, it helps you avoid the cycle of repeated mistakes. Remember, life is not a sprint. It's more like a marathon. Sometimes the real power lies in stopping before taking the next step. Keep this in mind, my friend. Acting without thinking is like sailing without a map. You will get lost. 10. Redefine your path. Have you ever wondered why you keep making the same mistakes over and over again? No matter how many times you promise to change, you somehow end up falling into the same trap. Well, know this, it's not magic, it's not fate, it's simply the story you keep telling yourself. That narrative that feels so natural is actually the script that's keeping you stuck in an endless cycle. But what if you could write a new story? One where you are the protagonist who finally makes different decisions and avoids the old traps. First, understand this. The stories we tell ourselves have immense power. They are the lenses through which we see the world. If you see yourself as a constant failure, you will continue making choices that fit that role, not because it's your destiny, but because it's what you keep telling yourself. If you constantly repeat phrases like, "I'm not good enough," "It always happens to me," or "This isn't for me," your actions will inevitably follow that narrative. Why? Because even unexamined beliefs guide your decisions. Now don't get me wrong, no one's asking you to become a delusional optimist who paints the world in pink. It's not about ignoring your mistakes or pretending everything's fine when it isn't. It's about realizing that the way you interpret your failures has a direct impact on what you'll do next. If you think a stumble means the end of everything, you'll probably keep repeating the same old story. But if you start seeing it as an opportunity to learn and adjust your path, the ending to your story could be completely different. The Stoics didn't propose denying difficulties or running away from them. On the contrary, they taught us to change the internal narrative, the way we interpret what happens to us. Instead of complaining about a mistake, ask yourself, what can I learn from this? If you make a mistake, you're not a failure, but someone who is learning. And that learning is what allows you to make real adjustments that prevent future falls. Think of an airplane pilot who constantly adjusts the course to stay on track. When an error occurs, he doesn't see it as a catastrophe, but as an opportunity to correct things before disaster strikes. Why not apply the same to your life? Change the narrative from victimhood and defeat to one of learning and growth. Remember, true change doesn't happen overnight. The first step is to identify the narrative that's holding you back. Think about the stories you've been telling yourself. Do you see yourself as someone who always fails, or as someone who learns from mistakes? Changing how you see yourself is the first step to transformation. After that, it's important to redefine your relationship with failure. Mistakes are not the end of the world. They are lessons in disguise. When you see them as opportunities to improve, the path forward becomes much clearer. And remember, this is not about a single action, but a continuous effort. Changing how you see yourself and how you interpret your experiences isn't something that happens instantly. It's a daily practice that requires awareness in every thought and every reaction. If you can do this consistently, the changes will become deeper and more sustainable. Finally, see yourself as the hero of your own story. No matter how many times you fall, what matters is how you get back up. Everyone stumbles in life, but what defines your path is how you move forward. Take responsibility for your own narrative and become the person who chooses to keep going despite the challenges. You are the protagonist, and if you choose to learn from each mistake, your story will have a very different ending. It's time to take the reins of your life and stop being a passive observer. Stop blaming fate, chance, or circumstances. You keep making the same mistakes because you're repeating the same story. It's time to rewrite it. Change the way you narrate your life to yourself, and you'll see how your decisions, your actions, and ultimately, your life will also change. At the end of the day, you are not your mistakes. You are the story you choose to tell about them. Life is not what happens to you, but what you decide to do with it. I sincerely hope this message has been helpful. I want to congratulate you for making it this far and finishing the video. This means you want to improve as a person. If you liked the video, leave a comment. If you don't know what to say, just write gratitude, and I'll know that you watched it until the end. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, what are you waiting for? Subscribe now and join us. Stoicism is full of teachings like this that are applicable to our everyday lives, so I encourage you to continue learning about this philosophy. I'm leaving 2 videos packed with Stoic wisdom for you to keep learning. Until next time.